Welcome to Trojan Vision One-on-One. I am your host, Stephanie East. Trojan Vision One-on-One is where we go behind the scenes and get to know the people that make Troy University such a fun and exciting and unique place. And if you have listened to Troy Public Radio or NPR, you know the voice that you're about to hear. It is Kyle Gassiott, the Director of Radio here at Troy University. And thank you so much for being with us today, Kyle.
Well, thanks, Stephanie. Now it's the voice and the visuals, I guess.
Yes, I know. We're so excited to put a face with the voice. And Kyle, you have been here now at Troy for a while. Tell us a little bit about your job as Director of Radio.
Sure. Well, I do a little bit of everything that way. And that's kind of the beauty of a radio station anyway. I feel like, and probably it's very similar in TV as well, you really need to know what everybody else is doing in order to make something work. But I am over programming, the news area, over fundraising as well. So whenever we go on the air 3 times a year and hold our annual fund drives, I'm responsible for that as well. Then starting an internship program and keeping that going. I did that years ago, and now we've gotten that going and off the ground. And really just kind of anything that comes along.
Well, you, as you mentioned, a jack of all trades at the radio station. So tell us about what started your love for radio. First, tell us where you're from and a little bit about your background and what made you so excited about that medium.
Sure. Well, I am a transplanted Texan. I originally grew up in Texas, born and raised in Midland, Texas. And as anybody knows who's been to Texas, that it is not a small state. And so when you go traveling anywhere, you're in the car for long, long hours. And my father was such a big fan of radio. And in particular, when we go to see my grandmother, who lived 9 hours away, so in one state, you're driving 9 hours, we would have the car radio on. And he was an early listener to public radio. And this was back in the 70s. And also, we used to listen to a lot of late night talk shows, but also CBS Radio Mystery Theater. And I just remember thinking, this was really amazing that I could be out in the world and, you know, driving in a car and really be taken anywhere. And so I think it was just that idea of just having something brought into your mind that way and brought it and really communicated to you that way that made me fall in love with it. But I'm also a recovering classical musician. So I started off life playing a variety of instruments, including piano and violin and cello, and then made my way down to bass. And so my undergraduate degree, which I got at Baylor, is in double bass. And then I went to the University of Iowa and got a master's in double bass performance and one in musicology. But I was always listening to the radio and always very drawn to what I was hearing, particularly on public radio in particular. And I toyed around with the idea of getting a PhD in communication studies and took a number of classes. But finally, a friend said, you know what, you should go try to be on the radio. And so I just happened on the campus of Iowa City at the University of Iowa to wander into WSUI and ask, what can I do? And since I was a musician, they said, why don't you start writing classical music reviews? And doing different music reviews. And not just classical, but a little bit of jazz and everything else. And so I started doing that. And that was fun. That was great. But then we rolled around to the fund drive. And of course, as everybody knows, the whole station kind of turns upside down to do that. And right about that time, also in Iowa, there was a mumps epidemic that hit the entire state. And people were catching the mumps that had been through their regime of vaccines. So everybody was curious where this was coming from, what was happening, and it was really hitting college campuses. So they called the station, the national network, a program called Weekend America called and said, can somebody go out and cover this? And they said, it's the fund drive, everybody's busy, let's give it to the intern. So my first story was a national story, and I went out and talked to all these students that had the mumps without a mask, without anything. So, you know, I was brave or something at that time, I don't know. Didn't even think about it. But that was my first story, and then after that, the bug was bit. And so I transitioned over and did a number of stories for them, and then eventually ended up getting a journalism degree.
Well, and so tell us what brought you here to Troy.
Sure. Well, after I had been at Iowa for a while, I did a couple of fellowships and training programs. One at ABC News in New York. I worked in the Brian Ross investigative unit there and did some stories for Good Morning America. And then I went to NPR for the election of 2008. I literally finished off the summer on Labor Day at ABC, got on a bus and went to DC, and I was there for the election of '08. Stayed through the inauguration. I was on the elections unit and the Washington desk at NPR, and that was fantastic learning, just really from at the feet of the masters, so to speak. And at the time, my partner, she had gotten a job here at Auburn, and so we came down here, and I went from the streets of DC to Opelika, and it was kind of a little bit of a culture shock. But since I'd grown up in the South and in Texas, I was acclimated and ready to go, and started working in the arts. But really, again, found ways to be involved in radio. I got in touch with Troy Public Radio and Judy Davis, who was the manager at the time, and Carolyn Hutchison, who we all know very well, the host of In Focus, and they let me guest host the program a number of times. And so I was able to talk with the people that we were bringing in for the Arts Association that I was working for, and I started covering some stories for NPR as well. And so when the job opened up here, that was 13 years ago, and then I became operations manager, and the rest is history.
The rest is history. And even now, you cover some huge stories for NPR. Tell us a little bit of maybe about, is there one story that really sticks out to you that really made an impact?
Well, I have a number of stories, as I know that you do as well, having done this for years too, that they stand out for various reasons. You know, I think in particular, some of the most impactful stories and stories that have stuck with me are I was called out to cover the mass shooting in Dadeville that happened a couple of years ago at a Sweet 16 birthday party. And literally my editor from NPR called me in the middle of the night and said, "Can you go and check this out? We don't know what's going on." And it was 1 a.m, and I threw something on and went and got my mics together and went out. And that was the start of covering that story for, you know, a pretty good solid week, and being there and interviewing people. And I remember, as we all know, when you're waiting around, a lot of times you're a reporter that's on the scene trying to figure out what your next move is going to be, because you know, you're waiting for a police press conference, you're waiting to talk with somebody. And so I just went with my microphone and went into the crowd, and I happened to find the grandmother of one of the of basically one of the victims who was shot, but also the mother of the woman who was hosting the birthday party. And so I just happened to find her, and kind of in a very raw and unguarded moment, and was able to have a conversation with her. And when somebody's willing to open themselves up to you that way, and they're willing to talk to you when you have your microphone, and you're there to document their story, but it's also really hard, as you know, because you're trying to walk the line and be very respectful as well.
Sure.
That was just a moment that stuck out to me, and I'm so grateful that she did that, and was willing to share with not only me but listeners around the country, because we immediately went on the air with it live. So that was one story in particular that that stuck with me. But that very same year, I also had one of the most fun stories I've ever done, which was actually I went out to Kyle Fair in Kyle, Texas.
Oh, yes, I remember this.
Yeah.
I love this.
It is a big deal to try to get the most number of people for the Guinness Book of World Records together with the same first name. And so it had to be spelled Kyle, K-Y-L-E, couldn't be spelled any other way. And they held it in Kyle, Texas. They were trying to beat the world records that were set by the Ivans, I think, a number of years before. And so this was the second or third year they assembled everybody in Kyle, Texas, and they were just sure they were going to get there this year. So I called my editor at NPR, and I said, you know, this is something I think would be really fun for Weekend Edition. And it was all a go. And so I went out, and not only did I get to go and spend the day interviewing a bunch of other Kyles, but it's very weird, Stephanie, to be in a crowd of people with your same first name. And everybody's wearing a shirt that says, "Hello, my name is Kyle."
Yeah, I was about to say, you probably don't need name tags, right?
No.
Yes.
Somebody yells Kyle, and everybody turns and looks. But and of course there were people there that were dressed like Kyle from South Park, and you know there there was a whole internet meme about Kyle's punching drywall, so I interviewed those guys too. So it's fun to fall down a rabbit hole like that. That's where journalism can lead you, right, into a bunch of different places that you never thought you'd go.
Absolutely. Well, I do want to touch on that, but first I have to find out, did they break the world record?
They didn't.
Oh,
they
goodness.
didn't. They were so close. But all the Kyles were okay. And what was really great for me was I was leaving and my battery died. And there was another Kyle in the parking lot who gave me a charge. He said, because we leave no Kyle behind.
There you go. I love it.
Was okay
but
in the end.
You do bring up a great point about journalism, is that sometimes you are covering things that are heartbreaking, like a mass shooting, but then also you get to do fun things too. It really is an exciting career.
It is, because nowhere else are you given the license to do that, and people expect it. I mean, I think that was one of the first things when I got into journalism that really just surprised me, is people would let me ask questions and let me into places. And again, you always want to be respectful, and you always want to tell their story well, and share their thoughts, and when they speak from the heart, you want to make sure that people understand. But to be able to do that, I mean, to me, it's the best job in the world.
And one thing that you did after that shooting was help to educate our students on how to cover events like that. And that is one thing that I do give Troy University great praise for, is that so many teachers have real world experience. And so it was amazing that you could take that experience and share that with the students as well. So we talk about your time in radio, but how is it also helping this new generation of journalists?
Well, I have to say that's been one of my proudest moments at this place, was actually coming in and being able to start an internship program. Because, as I mentioned, I was a graduate student at the time, and somebody at Iowa let me not only come in the station and get on the air, but also host a program live on the air on a Saturday afternoon. I don't think they would do that anymore, but they were very nice to me at that particular time. But I wanted to replicate that experience here, and that's one thing I think everybody was excited about the idea when I started, and to be able to replicate that experience for students. I have a number of students who have gone on to do amazing things, and I've trained students that are now training other people here. I'm so proud of what we do here with Joey Hudson, is what he does with our student program here as well. And so to be able to give others that experience, not only to go out and cover stories locally, but as you mentioned, we cover a number of stories for NPR. We basically do a national news story. It evens out to about 1 or 2 a month, around here, because we are in the capital city, and there are a lot of things that happen in Alabama that are newsworthy, but we can't do it all here as professional staff. So to be able to give the microphone to a student, to allow them to go out, and then to have their voices heard by the 60 million people that listen to public radio every week, that's great, and to have them put it on their resume as well.
Absolutely. We've had students cover the bridge crossing Jubilee in Selma when President Biden came to town, and to see those students get to experience that is just such a great feeling, and I know that they get so much out of it too.
Yeah, and again, that's just one of those moments that, who thought that growing up that I would be sitting 6 feet away from a president, that kind of thing. That's what journalism does, and that's something when you can not only do that, but also bring a student along and say, this can be your world as well, and also give them the benefit of your experience, because I have been to every single bridge crossing since I got here, so I've been to 13 of them, and they're always different, they're always new, but there's some things that remain consistent, but to be able, again, and there's something, I mean, this is no shade on TV at all, but there's something, I think, when you take a microphone out and people are just really literally opening their heart up, when you're there and you're asking questions and they really feel led to express themselves. That is something that I have found, particularly at Selma, when we go and people remembering the history of what that event means and what it means going forward too.
And you bring up TV. Of course, I have a television background and you have a radio background, but what I do love about radio is you get to tell the story. With TV, we also show them the pictures, but you get to actually describe the scene and describe the emotions. And so tell us a little bit about the thought process behind that when you're putting a story together.
Well, sure. I am guilty of saying that I think we have the best pictures in radio, because I think that really when you are doing it well and when you're able to take people to that scene and when you're able to describe the scene, that it can be the most powerful medium. It's the most personal in a lot of ways. We're with people in a lot of different places, in their cars and their homes, and sometimes in the shower, you're listening along. So there's a lot of things that can pull their attention away. And so that's one thing that when I tell students that you're telling a story, you want to make sure that you figure out how to grab their attention, hold their attention, but also really speak from the heart and really make sure that the pieces of tape that we call it, even though it's not tape anymore, it's all digital, but the pieces of tape that we use, the way that you set it up, the way that you're telling the story, that it's something that they can take with them, but you're not going to overload them as well. It's a fine balance, but we do have the ability to do that. And in public radio in particular, it's one of the reasons why I love the medium so much, is we have a lot longer to do that than in commercial media. So our listeners are willing to hang with us for a little bit longer, which is good.
Well, and you mentioned the difference between public radio and commercial radio, and of course the fund drives, as you've already talked about, are a huge part of that, and I know that is a lot of work. Tell us about the fund drive process and everything that goes into raising money for Troy Public Radio.
Well, I like to tell everybody that it's really like running a 12-hour show and a store at the same time, because that's what you're doing, because you're having not only to think about what's going next out on the air, and is it going next out on the air, because it is live radio all day long, but also making sure that everything works on the computer side of things, the donation side of things, making sure that we have enough people there to answer the phones, especially when they get ringing really frenetically, which is great. Makes us all very happy, but we need to make sure that we can get all those calls in and that the website is working and everybody can give there. But really, the other thing about it, Stephanie, that I love is during Fund Drive, we really get to put out our best china, because if you're asking people to step up and give you money and to support you, you really want to show them what they're paying for. And so that's a really great time that we can look back and think about what are all the important moments of the year. And so that gives us a chance to look back and really pull our best stuff together. But it can get very tiring, it can get very exhausting, but really the hard part for me is just the planning and getting there. Once we get to the week of Fund Drive, as you know, we have a lot of fun, because it's literally, you're so good to come on the air with us so many times too, but we're really just talking with each other and talking about something that we love, which is radio and journalism.
And I've noticed too, you guys have Troy Public Radio has a lot of support in this area. Tell us a little bit about how far Troy Public Radio reaches and the area that it covers, and some of the listeners that you hear from.
Sure, we hit 3 states with our towers. So we are in Southeast Alabama, Northwest Georgia, just a little over the border, and the Florida Panhandle. And we have 3 towers. We have WTSU, which is our largest and our largest wattage in terms of reach. You can really kind of catch us all the way up to Clanton, thereabouts, when you're driving north and over to Selma. And of course, we reach into Auburn, Opelika, that direction as well. And then in the Wiregrass region, it's WRWA, which can go all the way down to the beach and to the Florida Panhandle. We do have listeners from all these places that call in. And then we have WTJB, which is in Phoenix City, so that reaches over into Georgia a little bit as well. But you're right. And the Fund Drive is a really great time to hear back from people, because that's one thing about a public radio station and community radio too. People feel connected to you. And if they're giving you money, they're going to feel invested in what you're doing. So they're going to tell you the things that they love. They're going to tell you the things that they might want a little bit different. Very passionately, they will tell you sometimes. But it's great, because I really do feel like I'm making a connection with listeners.
And have you noticed recently, and I won't even just say recently, but maybe over the last few years, especially with podcasting, it seems like audio broadcasting is really having a resurgence over the last few years.
It's huge. And again, I think one of the beautiful things about the times that we're living in is that you have such choice. If you need to have a companion with you, that's somebody that is live and on the air, or you're following a breaking news story, you've got the live radio there, and you can check in with it and really just consistently know that there's something good that's on. But if you want to curate your world a little bit more, if you want to have access to something that's available on demand and set aside a time to binge through something, and we have got some great podcasts. I'll recommend Inside Job, which is our most recent. It's our true crime and public radio collaboration that Ann Kenda recently did about the Vicki and Casey White case. we've always got In Focus with Carolyn Hutchison, which is both on the radio and as a podcast. It's our most popular podcast. We've got Inquire, which is a conversation about music and the arts. And we've got The Talk of Troy, which is Troy's official university podcast, which is produced by students. And even Mad Melodies, which is a completely produced by students affair, which is very cool. But you're right. I mean, like, to have that and to be able to take it. I mean, I'm guilty of doing this myself. I try to also stay aware when I'm and very friendly when I'm out in public, but I'm always listening. And because you can take audio with you wherever you go. And if you need that sort of companion to go with you, or if you need to be able to have that with you, you can have it any which way you need it now.
And you mentioned Mad Melodies and some of the other podcasts, and some of our students, we've talked about how they get the real world experience here, have even won awards for their audio broadcasting.
Yes, both on the radio and podcasting too. And not only have they won regional awards, but we've gone all the way up to winning the national awards, like the top of the national awards at Society for Professional Journalists. So very excited about that. And as I've said, I've had students that have worked everywhere, gone on to work at NPR, at PBS, at the Smithsonian, to working at regional stations around the country. And we'll turn on the radio and we'll hear them reporting from different places. And then we have a lot of people who come through and they get a lot of skills and experience in radio and podcasting, and then go on and do other things, that they're able to use that experience in different ways. But it teaches you so many things. I mean, I believe that narrative can save the world, So if you teach somebody how to tell a good story and tell it well, it really can go very far.
Yeah, it's great. I love the communication skills that these students learn, and the writing and getting out there and talking to people is just amazing. And when you see, now I know you're the director of radio, but we do have a lot of students that go in there, and when you see them or hear them on the radio and hear that they've gotten a job or a great internship, how does that make you feel as an educator as well?
Oh, I mean, I could, if I could, I would turn cartwheels in the hall. But it's really, for me, again, giving somebody that opportunity to really feel see what it feels like, I think a lot of our students today, they don't, I mean, I know whenever I had a live broadcast, I would literally just camp out by the radio and kind of know there's that. And they're maybe not as eager as I am, because they know that they can get it later, download it later, listen to it later. But they are very, I think it is a process, and you can see them whenever they make that connection that this is something that I did, but not only that, but I have an audience of people that have heard me. That I've reached somebody. And to me, when that moment happens, that's one of the best feelings in the world. And
you mentioned a lot of the shows that are produced here. If somebody was watching this and said, I'd like to check those out, what is the best way to do that?
Go to troypublicradio.org, because not only do we have a link to our broadcast schedule, you can stream us there. We always say stream and support us. So if you have a little bit of extra resources around that you want to throw our way, we'd be happy to do that. But we also have a listing of our podcasts, and we have 14 of them that we're producing.
Wow, so, 14, that's amazing. And so I do want to know, you mentioned you played music. Do you still play music now?
I do, not in front of anybody right now. Because the time to practice has gotten so hard, like once you start doing this, step into this world, and then it becomes a little more difficult to kind of keep up that other world. But the wonderful thing about it is being involved in radio, I'm never away from music. And the performance background and a lot of what I learned in that training has paid off greatly here. And also I teach a class here at Troy University in popular music, so that allows me to do that as well.
I was just about to say that you also get to bring your love of music to the students. Tell us a little bit about that class.
Yes, classic vinyl, and it is a long-standing staple here at the university. I know a lot of people who came through the university remember that class. And so I do meet a lot of people who, I took that. But I love it because that, as a musicologist, that was my area, was American music, popular music, opera as well, but really, with an American emphasis. So to be able to get into a classroom and go all the way from Stephen Foster through Elvis, through James Brown, Aretha Franklin, all the way up to Adele and Lizzo and Kendrick Lamar, to take them all the way from one end of the spectrum to the other is really great in class.
I want to take that class.
Come on over.
Because you can learn so much through music.
Well, that's really how I approach it too, because, and I'm always trying to remind them of moments in history that they known about, and the impact that that had on music and also popular culture and how important it is. So I'm hoping by the end, when they leave class, that they listen to music a little bit differently, but they also realize that there's some important historical connections that they made throughout the course as well.
Well, and back real quick to Troy Public Radio. Of course, this show will air at different times on Trojan Vision, but the fund drives happen 3 times a year, right? So tell us what times of the year we can look forward to calling in and donating to Troy Public Radio.
I like where you're headed. But yes, we have 3. One of them is in the fall. It's typically in the middle of September. And then as we get closer to the end of the year, in which a lot of people are thinking about charitable giving and that end of the year giving, we have one that is in the middle of December, but really kind of all of December is kind of our fund drive month or giving month, because we go from Giving Tuesday all the way. People, I will be sitting there on New Year's Eve, Stephanie, looking at my phone, seeing people give right up until midnight, and that's great.
Yeah,
that's wonderful.
Absolutely, right.
Yes, and then our spring drive happens in the middle of April.
And you are the director of radio, and you've mentioned a few people that you work with, but brag a little bit about the team that is also part of Troy Public Radio.
Oh, it's the best team there is. I mean, I can't brag about them enough. I can't sing their praises enough. But really, you know, that from our morning edition host, Ann Kenda, who is up earlier than any of us are, you know, she's excited about being in front of the news that early in the morning, which is great. To, of course, Joey Hudson, who I mentioned a little bit earlier, who is our All Things Considered host in the afternoon, but he also does an outstanding job as our student mentor as well. He's been through the program himself, and so he's now taking other people through that as well. To Austin Toy, who's over our podcast program. He's our podcast program manager, and all those 14 podcasts he has some involvement with, and he does an amazing job doing that. And that's quite a number of podcasts, and many other places have. To Carolyn Hutchison, who hosts In Focus over the noon hour and brings so much experience, but just so much warmth. And you know, Carolyn leads the charge, basically. I mean, throughout the day, I'm always amazed at what Carolyn is able to find and bring and welcome people to our noon hour as well. And then Michelle Mowry, who is over our development and does such a spectacular job making sure the station has what it needs and is so passionate about it. It's really amazing what she's able to do, and she works with Kristen Cunningham, who's our public radio membership manager. Cindy Lindsay, who helps keep things running behind the scenes with our promos and keeping things on the air as part of as an operator for the station. And of course, we have great support from Matt Clower, who is our Senior Director of Communications, and he's over the station as well. So.
Yeah, I'm glad you got to mention that, because we always think about the people we hear or the people we see on TV, but there's always a team behind the scenes putting things together and making sure everything runs like clockwork. Yes. Kyle, thank you so much for taking the time and being with us today. I've had so much fun talking to you. And everybody, if you're watching this, be sure to tune in to Troy Public Radio and support what we are doing here at Troy University. It truly is a great program, and you keep it running spectacularly. Troy is lucky to have you, Kyle.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. I'm always happy to be here.
Well, thanks so much. And join us next time for Trojan Vision One-on-One.